The scream cut through the music like a blade. Not a scream of pain. Something worse. The kind that rips out of your throat when your brain can't process what your eyes are seeing. Priya Nolan set her champagne glass down slowly. Across the Meridian Grand ballroom, Chicago's most exclusive venue, the kind of place where a table cost more than most people's cars, every conversation had stopped. Every head turned toward the entrance. And Priya understood why. Dani Osei was standing at the top of the curved marble staircase. Dani, who cleaned Priya's bathrooms, who ironed Priya's blouses, who had spent the last 7 months on her knees scrubbing grout from Priya's kitchen tiles for $14 an hour. That Dani, standing in a dress that made every woman in the room look like they'd dressed in the dark. Ivory silk. Not white ivory. The kind of color that exists only in certain light, shifting like water. Thousands of hand-stitched glass beads ran from the neckline down to the floor in cascading rivers. The cut was architectural, precise, the kind of precision that doesn't come from a machine. Is that? Someone behind Priya breathed, then stopped. That's an Adiz original, a man said. His voice broke on the last word. I covered the Adiz runway show in Milan. That dress. That's the dress. From the closing night. That dress isn't for sale, a woman whispered. It was never for sale. The family keeps all the closing pieces. Priya felt the floor tilt beneath her heels. No, this wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. 3 days earlier, Priya had been standing in her walk-in closet with 2 of her closest friends, Jade Moreau and Skylar Fitch, watching Dani fold a cashmere throw on the bed in the next room. I have an idea, Priya had said, in a voice loud enough to carry. She'd walked to the bedroom doorway. Dani. A pause to make sure Jade and Skylar were positioned behind her. I'm hosting a table at the Meridian Gala on Saturday, the charity event. You've probably seen the invitations on my desk. Dani had looked up, brown eyes steady. She never reacted too much, which Priya had always found irritating. Tickets are $8,000 each, Priya continued. I've decided to give you one. A silence stretched. It's exclusive. Everyone who matters in this city will be there. I thought you deserved a night out. She'd let the smile sit long enough to sting. Wear whatever you have. I'm sure you'll find something appropriate. She turned back to her friends. They'd made it to the hallway before the laughter started. Quiet, vicious. A sound Priya would later wish she could take back. Did you see her face? She's gonna show up in something from Target. The whole room is going to know she's the help. Behind the half-closed bedroom door, Dani had stood very still folding the cashmere throw. Her hands moving on habit while her mind moved somewhere else entirely. She'd let the laughing voices fade down the hallway. Then she'd set down the throw, walked to her bag, pulled out her phone, stared at a contact she hadn't called in 6 months. Pressed call. Mama, she said when the line picked up. I need the ivory dress. Here's what Priya Nolan didn't know about the woman scrubbing her floors. Dani Osei's mother was Adiz Osei. If you didn't recognize that name, you weren't in fashion. Adiz had built one of the most respected design houses in the world from a single rented studio in Lagos. By the time Dani was 12, Adiz gowns were on Grammy stages and royal balconies. By the time Dani was 16, museums were requesting pieces for permanent exhibitions. By 20, Adiz's work had been on the cover of every major fashion publication on 3 continents. Dani had grown up inside that empire. Private schools, apartments in London and New York, front row seats at every show, a name that opened doors so fast, she'd never once had to knock. And that was the problem. At 24, Dani had realized she didn't know who she was without the name. Every friendship, every opportunity, every room she'd ever walked into. It had all come through the door of being Adiz's daughter. She couldn't separate herself from the inheritance. Couldn't know if anything she'd built was actually hers. So she'd made a deal with her mother. 1 year. Completely anonymous. No access to family accounts. No using the Osei name. A real job in a real city starting from nothing, to find out who Dani was when the name was stripped away. Her mother had cried, then agreed. One condition. If Dani ever truly needed her, She would be there within 24 hours. Dani had chosen Chicago, found the housekeeping agency, moved into a studio apartment with secondhand furniture and a mattress that was too soft. She'd learned what tired felt like in her feet. She'd learned what it meant to be invisible, to stand in a room and have people look past her, through her, around her, people like Priya Nolan who spoke to her the way you speak to a piece of furniture. She'd planned to finish the year. Then Priya had stood in the doorway with that smile, and everything had changed. Dani stared at her phone after the call ended. She'd given 7 months to this experiment. She'd proven what she needed to prove. Time to remember who she was. The package arrived 18 hours later. Not by courier van. By a black car with a driver who buzzed the apartment intercom and handed her a sealed garment case, followed by 4 more people. Her mother's head stylist, 2 assistants, a makeup artist, all of them carrying black cases of their own. "Your mother sends her love?" the stylist said, unzipping the main garment bag. "And her best work." The ivory dress came out like a living thing. It shifted in the apartment light, the glass beads catching and scattering every photon in the room. Dani had seen it once before, on the runway in Milan under stage lights, as the closing piece of her mother's most acclaimed collection. Critics had called it architectural poetry. A museum in Amsterdam had offered to buy it. Her mother had declined. And now it was here, in a studio apartment with second-hand furniture. Because Priya Nolan had wanted to see a housekeeper embarrass herself. There was a note in the garment case, handwritten. "You were never invisible. You were just choosing to be quiet. Come home when you're ready. Mama." Dani folded the note carefully and put it in her pocket. Then she sat down in the chair they'd set up by the window and let them get to work. 5 hours later, she looked in the mirror. The woman looking back didn't look like a housekeeper. Didn't look like Adi's daughter playing dress-up. Didn't look like anyone's idea of anything. She looked like herself. Finally, fully herself. She picked up her bag and walked out. Back in the ballroom, Dani descended the marble staircase. The crowd parted not on purpose, not with any intention. The way crowds part when something moves through them that they don't quite know how to stand next to. Phones came up. Voices dropped. Someone near the bar actually dropped their drink. Priya was frozen. Jade had reached out and grabbed her wrist without realizing it. Dani crossed the ballroom floor like she'd been crossing ballroom floors her whole life, which she had. She moved through the parted crowd with no urgency, no performance, no anger on her face. Just a calm so complete it was almost unsettling. She stopped in front of Priya. "Mrs. Nolan." Her voice was warm. "Thank you so much for the invitation. This was incredibly generous of you." Priya's mouth moved. No sound. "You told me to wear whatever I had." Dani touched the dress once, lightly, at the waist. "I hope this is appropriate." Somewhere behind Priya, a man laughed. One sharp burst of startled sound, quickly swallowed. Jade had let go of Priya's wrist. Her voice was barely a breath. How did you, that dress? I know that dress. That's from the Adi's Milan show. My mother made it." The words dropped into a silence so complete that half the ballroom heard them. Jade's voice cracked. "Your mother is Adi's?" Dani tilted her head slightly. "Dani Osei. Perhaps you've heard of her." Then the room erupted. Not all at once. In waves. A gasp. Then a ripple. Then the full roar of 200 people simultaneously processing the same impossible information. Priya stood at the center of it like a woman in the eye of a storm, and unlike storms, this one wasn't moving around her. This one was looking directly at her. Priya found out what it felt like to become invisible inside of 20 minutes. The conversations that stopped when she approached. The eyes that slid away. Jade had walked off without explanation. Skylar was on the far side of the room having what looked like an animated, horrified conversation with someone Priya didn't recognize. Meanwhile, Dani was surrounded. Fashion editors. Executives from brands Priya had been trying to get meetings with for 2 years. The chairwoman of the charity. The venue owner. All of them leaning in, laughing, touching the dress, asking questions. Dani answered each one like she had all the time in the world. Priya's husband found her against the far wall. Nate Nolan was not a man who raised his voice. He didn't need to. 43 years old, built a commercial real estate empire from the ground up, the kind of man who communicated everything essential without changing his expression. He leaned in close. "Tell me what happened."